December 4th, 2025, 04:15 a.m. north of Mogadishu. The ocean was supposed to be quiet at that hour. It was not. Before sunrise, U.S. Africa Command received a report serious enough to jolt operations rooms from Djibouti to Washington. In just 14 minutes, an American-linked merchant tanker, despite armed security on board, was systematically stripped by a pirate faction the world believed had disappeared. That assumption was wrong. Black Tide was not gone. It was back. In only 9 days, the group seized 1.8 million liters of U.S. aviation fuel, 13 containers of sensitive aircraft components, and more than $42 million in advanced navigation electronics. This was not chaos or chance. The cargo was moved with precision into a hidden complex, carved nearly 300 meters into solid Somali rock. This was no longer old-style piracy. It was a direct national security breach, the kind the United States had not faced in decades. By dawn, one conclusion was unavoidable. Operation Iron Twilight was no longer optional. It was inevitable. You are watching Titan Navy. If you want clear naval and battlefield analysis, like the video, subscribe, and stay with us. At 4:15 a.m. on December 4th, 2025, 58 nautical miles north of Mogadishu, Somalia, the first confirmed report reached U.S. Africa Command. A merchant tanker escorted by 2 private security vessels had been completely looted in less than 14 minutes. Not by a navy, not by a conventional military force, but by a resurgent Somali pirate faction American officials were confident had died out years earlier. They were wrong. The group called itself Black Tide, a name once whispered across Indian Ocean shipping lanes and then dismissed as history. In the final weeks of 2025, that name returned, backed by a level of coordination that stunned U.S. analysts. Over the course of 9 days, Black Tide seized 1.8 million liters of U.S.-grade aviation fuel, 13 containers of classified aircraft components, and more than $42 million in navigation electronics from civilian vessels. Losses of this magnitude had not occurred since the early 2000s, but this time the stakes were far higher. Intelligence drones traced the stolen cargo to a remote cliff system on the Ras Hafun Peninsula, where Black Tide had constructed an underground network of tunnels and storage chambers extending nearly 300 meters into solid rock. Inside, analysts estimated over 140 armed pirates fortified with Soviet-era heavy machine guns and RPGs. Washington understood the implication instantly. If even a fraction of those aircraft components reached extremist networks inland, the United States would face the most dangerous black market leakage of military technology in more than 30 years. The question was no longer whether America would respond, it was how fast. And at 4:15 a.m., as the sun rose over the Horn of Africa, the decision was made. Operation Iron Twilight would begin. At 10:40 p.m., Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri urgency inside the Pentagon had reached a level unseen since the early days of the War on Terror. The full intelligence briefing on Black Tide's underground depot stunned senior officials. For the first time in over 3 decades, a non-state criminal organization had stolen enough U.S. aircraft material to assemble at minimum 4 fully operational weapons systems if sold to the highest bidder. The risk was no longer regional. It was global. At 10:41 p.m., the president approved the strike. Not a warning shot, not a negotiation, a full elimination order. 2 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers aircraft valued at $2.1 billion each were selected for the mission. Their payload was the GBU-57A-B, a 13-ton bunker buster designed to punch through up to 60 meters of reinforced earth. The decision was precise, calculated, and final. If black tide was hiding deep inside the rock, the bombs would go deeper. The crews were briefed in silence. Every number carried weight. An 11 200-kilometer flight, a 27-hour mission, a margin of error under 0.4 meters, and a single attack window lasting just 6 minutes. Failure meant black tide would scatter beyond reach. Success meant erasing the most dangerous pirate fortress seen in decades. As the hangar doors opened, cold December air swept across the concrete. The twin B-2s rolled forward, their matte black wings nearly vanishing into the night. No lights. No sound beyond the rising hum of their engines. On the other side of the world, black tide believed their tunnels made them untouchable. They were wrong. The mission had begun. At 3:12 a.m. on December 5, 2025, over the Ras Hafun Peninsula in Somalia, the B-2 Spirits arrived above the Horn of Africa under absolute silence. Flying at 50,000 feet, they were invisible to every radar system Somalia possessed. Even Russian-made P-18 early warning arrays, upgraded in 2022, detected nothing but empty sky. Inside the tunnels, the black tide pirates slept. To them, the night felt ordinary, calm, safe. It wasn't. At 3:06 a.m., an MQ-9 Reaper orbiting 11 miles offshore transmitted final confirmation. 142 armed pirates were inside the main chamber. 1.8 million liters of stolen U.S. aviation fuel were stacked against the rear rock wall. The entire cave complex was supported by a single 60-meter limestone pillar. If that pillar failed, the fortress would collapse. Then trouble hit. A sudden low-pressure pocket formed along the coastline. Winds shifted sharply to 16 knots. Clouds dropped fast, sealing the cave entrance from view. The targeting window, already limited to 6 minutes, shrank to barely 140 seconds. For a moment, the entire mission hung by a thread. Then the lead B-2 pilot made a decision no simulator could prepare for. He dropped altitude sharply, sliding the 170-foot wingspan just 980 feet above the ocean. At that height, one mistake meant water. But the cloud layer broke. The entrance reappeared. Target lock was achieved. At 3:12 a.m., two GBU-57 bunker busters, each weighing 13 tons, were released. They didn't fall. They vanished into the darkness. Silent. Precise. Unstoppable. 5 seconds later, the ground convulsed. A shockwave ripped through the cliffs with the force of 11 tons of TNT. Seismic sensors in Djibouti recorded a 3.2 magnitude tremor. The limestone pillar fractured instantly. The tunnels collapsed inward like crushed lungs. Fuel tanks ruptured. An ignition flash lit the entire bay. An orange column of fire rose 140 feet into the air, visible from fishing villages nearly 20 miles away. 8 pirate boats were vaporized. The stolen aircraft components were buried beneath 300,000 tons of rock. Black Tide's command center ceased to exist in under 7 seconds. 7 seconds. The world would later call it the cleanest strike against organized piracy in modern history. But in the burning darkness of Ras Hafun, one fact was undeniable. Black Tide had been erased, and the ocean was silent again. At 5:00 a.m. off the coast of Somalia, the destruction of the Black Tide fortress should have ended everything. But in war, whether fought by nations or by criminals, chaos always pushes back. That moment came exactly 28 minutes after the B-2 strike. A Reaper drone detected movement. 3 surviving pirate boats, high-speed fiberglass skiffs, burst out of a secondary exit tunnel that had never appeared on satellite scans. They weren't part of the plan. They were the Plan B. Each boat carried between 12 and 15 armed fighters, bringing the total to nearly 40 survivors. They fled east engines, screaming at 52 knots, heading toward the only American target within reach, the fleet oiler USNS Kanawha. It sat just 14 miles offshore. If they reached it, the consequences would have been catastrophic. The canoe carried 9.3 million liters of fuel. One detonation could have turned the entire bay into a firestorm and killed everyone aboard. Inside the canoe's combat center, alarms erupted. Radar screens painted 3 fast-moving contacts closing at dangerous speed. The crew had minutes, maybe less. But the United States had anticipated retaliation. From 3,000 feet above, an MH-60R Seahawk helicopter swept in its searchlight, slicing across the black water. Mounted on its left pylon were 2 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles. Above them, the Reaper drone angled downward, streaming targeting coordinates directly into the Seahawk's fire control system. The first missile struck at 5:47 a.m. One pirate boat split apart, instantly debris scattering across the waves. The remaining 2 skiffs zigzagged wildly, firing RPGs in desperation. The Seahawk was forced to pull back. One rocket passed so close, it stripped paint from the helicopter's underside. But escape was never an option. 9 miles south, the USS Kearney had already locked its Mk-38 Bushmaster cannon onto the fleeing boats. At 5:52 a.m., the cannon opened fire. 56 rounds in under 8 seconds tore through the second boat's engine block. Flames erupted. Pirates leapt into the sea, shouting into the darkness. The final skiff tried to disappear behind the smoke, pushing its engine beyond the limit. It didn't matter. The Reaper descended to 2,000 feet, its lowest safe altitude, and fired a single Hellfire missile. At 5:59 a.m., the last boat vanished in a white flash. By 6:02 a.m., the ocean fell silent again. 19 survivors were pulled from the water. 11 vanished beneath the waves. At 6:05 a.m. at U.S. Naval Support Facility, Djibouti, the sun had barely risen over the Gulf of Aden when the final report arrived. Operation Iron Twilight, planned in near-total silence and executed across 2 continents and 11,200 kilometers, was declared 98% successful. Black Tide, once considered the most organized pirate syndicate of the decade, had been effectively erased. Their fortress collapsed, their boats destroyed, their command structure annihilated in under 5 hours. Not by chance, not by luck, but by preparation, reach, and overwhelming control. Yet, the true weight of the mission went far beyond destruction itself. For the first time, U.S. officials disclosed the full scale of the threat Black Tide had posed. Analysts confirmed that if the group had successfully sold the stolen materials, they could have funded up to 6 fully armed militant cells across East Africa. Worse still, with 1.8 million liters of U.S.-grade aviation fuel in their possession, extremists could have launched attacks with operational reach, stretching from Yemen to Kenya. The world had been far closer to a new wave of regional instability than anyone realized. Now that future was ash and seawater. Inside the briefing room in Djibouti, commanders reviewed what the mission had preserved. The safety of more than 600 American service members stationed across the region. The protection of $3.4 billion in naval assets operating in the Indian Ocean. The uninterrupted flow of fuel supporting 4 U.S. carrier strike groups. And the prevention of a global black market leak of sensitive aircraft components not seen since the Cold War. To the pirates, the tunnel system at Ras Hafun had been a shield. Deep, hidden, untouchable. To the U.S. Air Force, it became a target with a single answer: precision, speed, overwhelming force. Behind all the numbers and assessments, the message was simple. America may argue, divide, and fight its political battles at home. But when its security is threatened, when its people, its technology, or its service members are put at risk, the response is always the same. Swift, silent, decisive. As the room emptied and the monitors dimmed, one final question lingered. A question older Americans watching from home would recognize immediately. In a world growing more unstable by the day, how many more nights like this will America have to endure to stay safe? At 8:10 a.m. inside a CIA field station in Djibouti, while the Pentagon assessed a clean military victory, intelligence analysts were already staring at something far more unsettling. The collapse of the Black Tide fortress had exposed more than concrete and limestone. Buried beneath the rubble, analysts recovered fragments of equipment that should never have been in the hands of pirates. Encrypted radios, military-grade satellite uplinks, frequency-hopping transmitters found only in government arsenals. At first, the assumption was simple. The gear had been stolen. But a deeper forensic analysis revealed something far more chilling. The devices were not second-hand. They were brand new. Manufactured in April 2025, shipped out of a Middle Eastern port, delivered through a covert supply chain with a logistics trail too clean, too organized, and too professional for any pirate group to manage on its own. Someone had armed Black Tide deliberately. Within hours, CIA financial trackers pulled the first thread. A series of unexplained wire transfers totaling $2. $8 million over 9 months funneled into an offshore account in the Seychelles. The account did not belong to a pirate, not to a smuggler, but to a shell corporation tied to a well-known trading company based in Dubai. A company previously flagged in 5 separate counterterrorism investigations, yet never prosecuted due to a lack of hard evidence. Now that evidence was no longer missing. It was buried beneath a collapsed cave in Somalia. As analysts dug deeper, the picture grew darker. They uncovered that Black Tide had been receiving $250,000 per month in structured logistics payments from the Shadow Corporation. The money funded fuel weapons boat engines, encrypted communications gear, and payments to smugglers operating through Yemen's coastal corridors. What stunned Washington was not just the money. It was the precision. Black Tide's supply chain mirrored that of a paramilitary force, not a group of sea raiders. Ammunition shipments arrived every 23 days without fail. Replacement parts were airdropped in waterproof crates. Even their satellite uplinks updated on a fixed schedule precise to the hour. This was not improvisation. This was sponsorship. When CIA Director Ford briefed the National Security Council, she delivered a single sentence that froze the room. Black Tide did not steal American technology. They were preparing to use it. Then came the bombshell. Intercepted messages recovered from the pirate fortress after the strike referenced Phase 2, scheduled for January 2026, involving coordinated targets across 3 separate shipping lanes. Black Tide was not an isolated threat. It was one arm of something larger, something with structure, discipline, funding, and a political agenda. For the first time, Washington realized a hard truth. America had not just crushed a pirate group. It had stepped on the foot of a giant standing in the shadows. At 3:40 p.m. on December 6, 2025, 74 kilometers inland from Ras Hafun, Somalia, the intelligence recovered from the collapsed Black Tide fortress pointed to one final danger: a secondary weapons cache hidden deep inside Somalia's arid interior. If the primary depot had been the heart of Black Tide's operation, this secondary cache was its lungs. Quiet, concealed, essential for survival, and it had to be destroyed. At 3:40 p.m., a Black Hawk helicopter carrying 8 members of SEAL Team 6 touched down in a dust field surrounded by thorn bush and volcanic rock. The air shimmered at 104 degrees Fahrenheit. There were no roads, no landmarks, only coordinates and a satellite image showing a small cluster of abandoned goat herder huts. Appearances meant nothing. SEAL Team 6 moved in a tight diamond formation, scanning for pressure plates, tripwires, and concealed shooters. They did not wait long. 33 meters from the first hut, the lead operator raised a clenched fist. Stop. Half buried beneath loose gravel lay a Soviet F-1 grenade wired to a crude anti-handling device. A decoy. The real threat was deeper. At 3:56 p.m., the team breached the first structure. It was empty except for one detail that stopped them cold. Fresh motorcycle tracks cut through the dirt. The pirates had been there less than 12 hours earlier. The team followed the tracks behind the huts and discovered a concealed hatch hidden beneath a rusted water trough. Thermal imaging revealed a heat source below likely generators or machinery. They descended. The underground room was far larger than anyone expected. 23 meters long, lit by stolen UN solar panels and packed with enough weaponry to supply a full militia. RPG warheads, crates of 7.62 mm ammunition, 10 portable satellite transmitters, and 210 kilograms of military-grade C4. Enough explosive to erase an entire city block. But the most shocking discovery sat on a steel table in the corner. Printed schematics for American aircraft refueling valves, stamped with a production date just 3 weeks old. This was not leftover loot. This was an active supply chain. At 4:22 p.m., the team planted demolition charges. The explosion that followed sent dust billowing across the desert like a rising storm cloud. When the smoke cleared, the last operational arm of Black Tide was officially dead. Yet, as the SEALs extracted one, reality lingered in the air. Black Tide had not been acting alone, and the sophistication of the funding proved it. Someone was still feeding the beast, and the United States was only beginning to uncover who. At 7:30 a.m. on December 7, 2025, CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, triggered an emergency briefing. The findings from the underground cache in Somalia had changed everything. What SEAL Team 6 uncovered fresh schematics, industrial-grade C4, and high-precision satellite transmitters did not belong to any pirate syndicate. It belonged to something with a budget, a structure, and a reach that no one in Washington had anticipated. For years, Black Tide had been dismissed as a relic of the early 2000s, a leftover problem from a different era. The new intelligence model told a very different story. Analysts linked the pirates' funding streams, weapons crates, electronic shipments, and oil smuggling routes to a sprawling criminal military network operating across 7 countries. From Yemen to Eritrea, Somalia to Oman, Kenya to Ethiopia. The network's annual revenue was estimated at $1.2 billion, larger than the GDP of several small nations. And the deeper analysts dug, the darker the picture became. What appeared to be disorganized piracy was, in fact, a layered operation built on 3 core pillars. Fuel smuggling, moving over 90 million liters of stolen diesel and aviation fuel across the Gulf of Aden every year. Arms brokerage, shipping Soviet, Chinese, and even Western weapons to militant groups with profit margins exceeding 300%. And covert technology trafficking, acquiring sensitive components from corrupt contractors and selling them to hostile actors. Black Tide was merely the maritime arm of this empire. The network even maintained a governance structure, a council of 6 coordinators, each controlling a regional zone, meeting every 2 months at rotating safe houses in Djibouti, Aden, or Salalah. They operated like a government in the shadows, collecting taxes, settling disputes, enforcing obedience. But the most disturbing discovery came from a decrypted message recovered from the secondary cache. The Americans destroyed Ras Hafun, Prepare extraction for Phase 2. Funds secured. Replacement materials en route. Replacement materials. The meaning was unmistakable. Someone somewhere was already moving a new shipment of military-grade equipment to replace what Black Tide had lost. Langley connected the final dots. This organization was not reacting to American pressure. It was planning for escalation. For the first time, the United States understood the true scale of the threat. This was no longer piracy. This was no longer smuggling. This was a proto-state, a shadow economy fueled by conflict trafficking and strategic sabotage. And America had just fired the first shot at 9:10 p.m. inside the U.S. Air Operations Center at Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar. The intelligence from Langley left no room for doubt. Every shipment, every encrypted radio, every dollar funneled into Black Tide's accounts pointed back to one place: a coastal military outpost disguised as a logistics storage facility inside a small but strategically positioned Middle Eastern nation. Publicly, that government was an ally. Privately, it had been selling access protection and weapons to the global network behind Black Tide for nearly 6 years. The smoking gun came from a shipping manifest uncovered by CIA cyber analysts. 43 crates of restricted dual-use electronics cleared by the nation's own defense ministry routed through Salalah and delivered to a smuggler fleet directly linked to Black Tide. The declared purpose of the shipment, marine communication repair parts, was a lie so thin it bordered on insult. Washington moved fast. At 9:10 p.m., the United States authorized Operation Breakwater. Not a declaration of war, but a precision strike designed to deliver a message no government could ignore. If you arm America's enemies, you will be exposed. 2 F-35B Lightning II fighters lifted off from the USS Wasp operating 180 miles offshore. Their mission profile was brutally simple: disable the outpost's radar, neutralize its underground weapons vault, sever the supply artery feeding the pirate network. At 10:02 p.m., the first phase began. A pair of AGM-88 HARM missiles streaked through the night sky, obliterating the outpost's air defense radar with accuracy measured in centimeters. The blast knocked out communications across a 17-mile radius, leaving the facility blind and silent. At 10:04 p.m., the second strike followed. The F-35Bs released 2 GBU-53B Stormbreaker bombs, weapons designed to hunt targets through darkness, smoke, and sandstorms. Both penetrated the underground vault. Thermal imagery later confirmed the destruction of more than $68 million worth of advanced electronics, drone engines, encrypted routers, and anti-ship missile components. Everything was gone in 6 seconds. The truth surfaced the next morning at a closed-door United Nations briefing. Satellite images filled the screens. Diplomats went pale. Reporters scrambled. Allied officials issued denials, but the evidence was overwhelming. Serial numbers, shipping logs, bank transfers. The global shadow network had lost its biggest sponsor, and Washington had made its position unmistakably clear. If you empower piracy, terrorism, or strategic sabotage, America will find you. And it will tear the mask off in front of the world. The strike did more than shake a foreign government. It shook Washington itself. Within hours, Congress convened an emergency joint committee, its first focused on maritime security in nearly 22 years. Lawmakers from both parties entered the chamber carrying the same question. How did a pirate network grow into a billion-dollar shadow state right under America's nose? The classified briefing that followed stunned the room. For 3 years, the Department of Defense had recorded 27 separate losses of sensitive aircraft components. Parts missing, mislabeled, or quietly written off as administrative errors. A truth buried beneath paperwork, fragmented reporting systems, and the dangerous assumption that no one was watching closely enough to exploit it. They were wrong. No one connected the dots until black tide forced the nation to look. When the CIA presented the network's estimated revenue, $1.22 billion, a congressman from Florida leaned back and whispered, "That's larger than the Coast Guard's entire countermuggling budget." The room went silent. Then came the part that infuriated Americans watching at home. Internal audits showed that at least 11 private contractors had repeatedly failed security checks, but were still given access to military supply chains because no replacement vendors were available. In other words, the system wasn't infiltrated, it was neglected. Public anger grew fast. Veterans groups demanded accountability. Families with children serving overseas flooded congressional hotlines. Pundits asked why America could track a hostile missile in space, but couldn't track a crate of avionics in its own ports. The political divide briefly disappeared. Republicans and Democrats, so often at war with one another, agreed on one thing. What happened was preventable and unacceptable. A new maritime security bill was drafted within 48 hours, allocating $4.6 billion to overhaul supply chain oversight, fund naval patrol expansions, and enforce criminal penalties for negligent contractors. But beneath the laws, beneath the speeches, one message echoed louder than the rest. America wasn't weakened by pirates. It was weakened by complacency. And after Rosshafen, that complacency had finally been exposed.